welcome. How are you doing today? Whatever the title of this video is, it's not clickbait. I really was friends with a guy who is a murderer. In 2006, I started this job at a head shop in Austin. I was a new hire along with this other dude, Nathaniel. So from 2006 to 2009, I worked with this dude, and it wasn't just that we saw each other at work. We were friends. Me and my best friend Sarsbeth, her channel will be linked below, we had a birthday party for him at Peter Pan Putt-Putt Golf in Austin, and there was one time that he got badly assaulted and beaten the fuck up, and he came over to our house and we iced down his injuries. There was one time Sars and I went down to the Greenbelt with him, and looking back, the red flags were there because we were swimming in the water, and at one point when we were standing in the water just talking to each other, Sars and I noticed that he had just pulled his dick out and was just waiting for one of us to notice that he just had his dick out underwater. And when we noticed, and we're like, oh my god, dude, put it away, what are you doing? I guess we both rationalized it as he was just joking around. In 2007, I got transferred to a different store location. So Nathaniel Briscoe and I were no longer working with each other directly. But in 2009, he got transferred to a new store that I had opened and was managing, and he got transferred in as management with me. So he and I were the fucking store managers. And every Wednesday, we had a manager meeting. At the store that he and I were managing at the same time, there was a RASPA stand down the block. If you're from a state that didn't used to be Mexico, a RASPA is a snow cone. So every Wednesday when we had to have these manager meetings, we would take a walk down the block together and go get these fucking giant RASPAs, and then sit in our manager meeting, eating our fucking snow cones, writing our shitty little bullshit notes. Which, by the way, I think I still have some because I have his work journal. In 2009, he found a sex worker on Craigslist. He fucked her and he killed her. And I know certain details about this because he confessed this shit to 3 fucking people that I know. So he kills this girl, right? And then he just kept coming to work for the next 5 days before law enforcement took him into custody. And when his case went to trial in 2010, there was an Austin American-Statesman Courts reporter who was live tweeting from the fucking courtroom. Listen, I don't think you understand how fucking wild it was to have a courts reporter live tweeting a trial in 2010. In modern day, that entire shit will be live streamed. Everybody be tweeting about it. In 2010, that was not common. So I was sitting there in 2010, fucking refreshing his feed, just waiting for every fucking next tweet to come up. And the character limit on Twitter was significantly smaller back then. And I remember my boyfriend at the time was watching me do this and was like, dude, why are you fucking doing this? He worked with him too. We knew this dude. And I guess some people aren't curious like I am. I looked up what I could find, and I didn't submit a records request from the county because it takes 12 to 14 days to get a reply, and you have to pay. So I printed out the 26-page document that was readily available online, and it is an appeal. This man, Nathaniel Briscoe, was convicted of murdering this woman, and he is sentenced to life, which in Texas, I don't know about other states, but a life sentence is 60 years. And he's eligible for parole after serving half of his life sentence. So after 30 years, he can apply to be paroled. And he was 30 when he was taken into custody for this murder. So at this point, he has served 14 years of his life sentence, and he will be 60 when he's eligible for parole. The first thing that we're going to read is from the Austin American-Statesman. It says that this article was posted September 21st of 2012, which I had to really look, because I was like, 2012, motherfuckers are gaslighting me because I absolutely know where I was and what I was doing and who I was fucking in 2012, and it was a very different situation from where I was going and what I was doing and who I was fucking in 2010, and I vividly remember refreshing the Twitter feed in 2010 following this fucking trial. AustinAmericanStatesman.com, get your shit together. Your dates are wrong by 2.5 years. Man accused of strangling woman, dumping body in Southwest Austin. In the dramatic conclusion of his opening statement to a Travis County jury, prosecutor Stephen Brand stopped talking for 2 minutes, the minimum time, he said, that murder defendant Nathaniel Briscoe would have had to stop Amy Elizabeth Dickey from breathing in order to kill her. State District Judge Julie Kosurik's courtroom was silent as Brand stood in front of the witness stand, his stare for a time fixed on Briscoe, who sat at the defense table. "And that's what killed her, ladies and gentlemen," Brand said at the end of 2 minutes. Briscoe, 30, is accused of killing Dickey, 28 years old, after summoning her to his Southeast Austin apartment for sex after midnight on May 21st, 2009. Brand said Dickey was a prostitute who used crack cocaine and advertised her services on Craigslist. And I'm going to stop for just a second. I don't know much about this girl, right? But her name was Amy Elizabeth Dickey. She at some point had worked in healthcare. At the time of her murder, she had fallen heavy into her substance abuse and was not doing well. So I feel like that makes some people think like, yeah, well, who cares? She's less dead than somebody else. No, she was fucking somebody. She was a woman, and her life fucking mattered. She was someone's mother, father, sister, daughter, brother, high school sweetheart's ex-girlfriend. Listen, Amy Elizabeth Dickey was a fucking person. Her life mattered. And this dude that I used to be friends with, he snuffed her shit out. He killed her with his bare hands. Briscoe could face up to life in prison if convicted of murder. He's also charged with tampering with evidence, which carries a maximum penalty of 20 years. Dickey was raised in McAllen and had attended Texas State University for a time before working in Austin as a medical assistant. Her mother, Linda Dickey, testified. Dickey began having problems with drugs after leaving that job and stayed hooked for the rest of her life, despite one stint in rehab. Linda Dickey said she did not know her daughter had begun working as a prostitute. Yeah, no shit. I did not expect to start feeling as emotional as I am feeling right now, so listen, I ain't got no kind of coping skills, but I do have a White Claw, not sponsored, so. Carrie Fontenette, who described himself as a friend of Dickey's, I think he might have been her pimp or something, the Clyde to her Bonnie, I'm not sure. Carrie Fontenette, said the two had both used crack before Fontenette drove Dickey from Northwest Austin apartment where they both lived to meet a client of Dickey's in South Austin on May 21st, 2009. Fontenette said Dickey paid him to drive her to meet a man after midnight outside the Autumn Hills apartments on Royal Crest Drive near East Riverside Drive. He said he stayed outside the complex until about 9 a.m. and Dickey never returned to the car. A landscaper found Dickey's body the next day in a field near the Randall's Supermarket on West William Cannon Drive at South Mopac Boulevard. Her body had been covered with grass clippings and pieces of bamboo. Detective Chris Smith told the jury that detectives found Briscoe after learning that Dickey had called his number the night she disappeared. One of the addresses linked to Briscoe was on Royal Crest, and another was a few blocks from where the body was found. That address was where Briscoe's father lives. Detectives found out that Briscoe worked at a head shop on Cesar Chavez Street and followed him home from work to the Royal Crest apartment. Briscoe agreed to go downtown for an interview. While he was away, police with a warrant searched his apartment. The prosecutor said investigators found pieces of duct tape in Dickey's hair and a roll of duct tape on Briscoe's bedside table. He said Dickie's DNA was found in Briscoe's apartment during a 4-hour interview with police. I remember this. I remember, because he called me and said he was going to be fucking late to work because he had to go fucking talk to the police. During the 4-hour interview with police, Briscoe eventually said he had put his hands over Dickie's throat during sex. He told police that she then left his apartment. In his trunk, asshole! Brand said an autopsy found that Dickie died from strangulation, smothering, or asphyxiation. Strangling somebody does not happen as fast as in the movies. He said the medical examiner found it would take 20 to 30 seconds for someone to pass out and 2 to 4 minutes to die. Defense lawyer Duke Hildreth told jurors that much of what Brand told them was true. Public defenders, oh my god. Like, you know what? The prosecution's right. Defense lawyer Duke Hildreth implored them to listen carefully to the evidence. They are going to paint a picture that sounds sinister and planned, Hildreth said. But when you listen to the evidence, it's the exact opposite. That's true. It wasn't, like, sinister and planned. He told 3 of my friends stories about what happened. Each of them got, like, a different version of, like, how he ended up killing her, but, like, the why he ended up killing her remained the same through the stories that I've heard. So, basically, Nathaniel Briscoe had this longtime girlfriend. She was significantly older than him, and she had, I think, lupus, and her health was not in a condition where she could be sexually active, so he was allowed to pay sex workers to, like, satisfy that in his relationship that was, like, not sexual with his longtime girlfriend. And for quite some time, he had, like, a regular girl that he would call over to, like, hook up with him. But this particular night, I think in May of 2009, she was, like, on vacation, unavailable. I don't know what was going on. So he got on Craigslist. He found some other girl and had her come to his apartment. In the story that Nathaniel told other people, he hired the hooker, he paid the hooker, the condom broke, and she asked for more money because she would need to, like, go get screened for STIs and potentially have an abortion, right? And he didn't have the extra $200 or fucking whatever dollars that she had requested. So he killed her over a couple $100. I don't give a shit. There's no amount of money that could have made that woman's life worth fucking taking. Like, fuck you, Nathaniel. It's bizarre. Whatever. Okay. I have another article that I printed out, but I feel like it's probably just a rehashing of what we just read over. It's written by the same man. Man gets life in woman's strangulation. A Travis County jury on Tuesday sentenced Nathaniel Briscoe to life in prison for the murder of Amy Dickey, a 28-year-old woman whom prosecutors say Briscoe hired as a prostitute last year before strangling her and dumping her body near his parents' home in Southwest Austin. The 30-year-old former head shop worker had no discernible reaction when State District Judge Julie Kasurek read the verdict. Reached after about 3 hours of deliberations. 3 hours of deliberations. That jury went, nah, dude, fuck you. You're done. Briscoe also received a 25-year sentence for tampering with evidence. The sentences will run concurrently. He will be eligible for parole after serving 30 years. Briscoe's parents and sister sat quietly in court for about 10 minutes after the verdict was announced. They said they had no comment. On the other side of the courtroom, Dickie's mother gave long hugs to prosecutors Stephen Brand and Brandon Grunwald, thanking them for their work. Outside court, Brand said Dickie, a former medical assistant who struggled with a crack cocaine habit before her death, was an innocent victim. Your plight in life, where facts and circumstances put you, doesn't make her less of a victim. He praised the investigation of the Austin Homicide Unit lead detective Will White. White, who waited at the courthouse for the verdict, in turn praised Brand and Grunwald. Yeah, they're all ass-patting each other. Probably high-five the public defender. I'm sorry for hating on public defenders. I'm just trying to insert jokes into something that is really upsetting. The evidence against Briscoe was strong. A man testified that he drove Dickie, who advertised her services on Craigslist, to the Autumn Hills Apartments on Royal Crest Drive in southeast Austin to meet a client after midnight on May 21st, 2009. She met a man that matched Briscoe's description and never returned to his car, said the witness, Carrie Fontenette. Detectives first linked Briscoe to the case through cell phone records. They quickly learned that he lived at the Autumn Hills Apartments, and his parents lived a few blocks from where Amy's body was found. Briscoe's father testified that bamboo sticks, similar to the ones found on Dickie's body, had disappeared from near his garage can around the time of Dickie's death. When detectives asked Briscoe to talk to them about a missing persons case, he agreed. During most of a 4-hour interview at police headquarters, Briscoe bantered excitedly on a variety of subjects, including working at vegan and raw food diets and role-playing games. Now listen, I remember this because the Courts reporter, Stephen Kraytak, who was live tweeting the trial, live tweeted all 4 hours of this taped interview with Nathaniel. And Nathaniel just blabbered on about every fucking topic that came to mind. Just everything. He just sat there and talked and talked and talked and talked and talked for 4 fucking hours when the police were just trying to interview him about a fucking body they found. What an excruciating 4 hours. At the end of the interview, he said he bit Dickie, whom he initially had denied knowing, and put his hands on her throat for about 5 minutes while they were having sex. He said he had paid her $150. I know how much money I was making as a manager, and he was also a manager at my same store. So listen, I back then I was probably spending $150 on a bunch of fucking pills, right? But I wasn't taking all those pills in one day. And that company, oh my god, everybody there is a bunch of fucking sluts who all fuck each other. Spending $150 when you could have fucked somebody from the other stores for free? No game. No game. And he had a girlfriend. Man, I fucking knew this guy was weird when we were friends, but like, I didn't know he was fucking weird enough to fucking strangle a woman to death. After paying her $150 just to fuck him. For what? 5 minutes? You know that motherfucker didn't last long. He had a Scooby-Doo tramp stamp. Like, I swear to God, this man had, well, I guess he still has because he's not dead. He has a Scooby-Doo tramp stamp on his lower back. He's got fucking Scooby and Shaggy. What a weird dude. Briscoe said Dickie left his apartment unharmed. During the punishment phase of the trial on Tuesday, the jury learned more about Briscoe, including that he was sentenced to a year in federal prison after he was found in illegal possession of a live grenade in 2001. That is true. I remember him telling me about that. They also heard allegations from an 18-year-old woman who said that when she was about 5 or 6, Briscoe attempted to take off her shirt and pants and exposed himself to her while they were in a makeshift teepee. I think this was his cousin. White also testified that police found Japanese animated porn in Briscoe's apartment depicting scenes of sadomasochism and bondage. During arguments on punishment, defense lawyer Joe James Sawyer asked the jury to consider how difficult prison is and how, once released, Briscoe would have a tough life. I mean, all the more reason to keep him in there. Brand argued that Briscoe is dangerous and needs to be locked up for life. I'm gonna look through his journal real quick and see if there's anything relevant in there that we, would care to read. It's mostly just, manager meeting notes and then, ideas for, projects at the store. Whatever this is an idea that he drew. Here's a manager meeting note where he wrote, bullet point number 1. City guy came by to look at erosion problem. We did have an erosion problem. Danny stopped them repeatedly from snooping around the property. They want access to property at all times and will contact the owner. Books to Northwest on Monday? Ellen out of town. Bug spray for spiders everywhere around store, wasps also. Hoe for taking care of back. I think we needed a hoe for the property erosion. Here's a shitty little list of fucking to-do things that he wrote down one day. I don't really care to look through this anymore. Like, I've been sitting on this thing since fucking 2009. Whatever. And now we're gonna read this fucking appeal. God, what a waste of time. I guess people got nothing to do in prison but time, but so, like, they just fucking do appeals for the sake of having something to fucking do. So this is his appeal. Texas Court of Appeals, 3rd District, Austin. Nathaniel Briscoe, appellant, versus the state of Texas, appellee. A jury convicted appellant Nathaniel Briscoe of murder and tampering with physical evidence and sentenced him to life imprisonment on the murder charge and 25 years on the tampering charge. He appeals, arguing the evidence is insufficient to support the verdicts and the trial abused its discretion in denying 2 motions for mistrial and admitting certain evidence. We affirm the trial court's judgments. The fuck are you talking about, dude? You did that shit and you know it. Amy Dickey worked as a prostitute through Craigslist. My good friend Mary recommended to me that before making this video, I should reach out to Amy Elizabeth Dickey's family and, like, try to get a sense of, like, who she was so that I could tell her story. And I think that's a fantastic idea and a great way to tell her story rather than telling Nathaniel's story. But I'm not like a true crime YouTuber who like does things like that, and I would feel like a total lunatic to like reach out to these people because like who the fuck am I? And also like ultimately I'm not telling you Nathaniel's story, and I can't tell Amy's story. I'm telling you my story of knowing this guy. Background. After midnight on May 21st, 2009, a friend drove her to an apartment complex for a prostitution call. The client was appellant Nathaniel Briscoe. On the drive to appellant's apartment, Dickey's driver noted that Dickey smoked crack cocaine and took naps, but that her demeanor was calm. Yeah, if a person's nodding out of consciousness, they probably are calm. The friend said that Dickey did not complain of any injuries, and her driver did not notice any bruising or other injuries. When they arrived at the apartment, appellant met Dickey at the entrance gate. Her driver watched Dickey walk away with appellant. Why do they keep... Just his name's Nathaniel. Cell phone records confirm that appellant had been in contact with Dickey that evening. For security purposes, Dickey and her driver had agreed that she would call him and let him know appellant's apartment number when she arrived, and that he would wait outside the apartment complex for her for 30 minutes to an hour. At 1:24 a.m., Dickey called and told her driver that she was all right. The driver heard Dickey ask a man which apartment she was in, and heard the man say, apartment 251. Dickey, however, was actually in apartment 241, where appellant resided. Apartment 251 was vacant. I wonder if he told them the wrong apartment number on purpose, or if they just heard it wrong. Dickey's driver waited outside for hours, but never saw Dickey alive again. Later that morning, a landscaper discovered Dickey's naked body in a wooded greenbelt area located approximately 1/2 block from the home of appellant's father. This is true. Nathaniel, when he dumped this girl's body behind a grocery store, he went to his parents' house and picked up like a bunch of bamboo cuttings and like tossed them on top of Amy's body. Dickey was lying face down with duct tape matted in her hair and dried blood on the right side of her face. DNA testing done on the duct tape was consistent with a mixture of both Dickey's and appellant's DNA. The body had been covered with a mound of grass clippings, leaves, rocks, and bamboo sticks. A team of investigators searched the greenbelt area for evidence. During the search, investigators discovered several sticks of bamboo behind the home of appellant's father. This was the only location in the entire search area where bamboo was found. Appellant's father testified that, oh, that's right, Nathaniel's own fucking family testified against him. They knew he was a piece of shit. Appellant's father testified that prior to Dickie's death, he and Appellant had been doing a gardening project using bamboo procured by Appellant. When questioned by investigators 4 days after Dickie's death, Appellant's father noticed that bamboo from the project was missing from the garage. During a 4-hour taped interview with the police, which was admitted into evidence, Appellant initially denied knowing Dickie. When shown a picture of Dickie, Appellant wrote on the photograph, "I do not recognize this person. Liar." Later, he acknowledged contacting Dickie for prostitution services, but alleged that the incident occurred in December, months prior to her death. Liar. And that Dickie had never been in his apartment. Liar. When confronted with the possibility that Dickie's DNA could be found in his apartment, Appellant eventually acknowledged that she had been in his apartment on the night of her death and alleged that they had engaged in sexual intercourse. Appellant told police that Dickie had become upset during sex after he bit her on the shoulder and the condom broke. Liar. Appellant also told police that he enjoyed squeezing a woman's neck during sex, and he admitted that while he was lying on top of Dickie during intercourse, he used her neck as a brace to push himself up while squeezing her neck with both of his hands for up to 5 minutes. Dickie responded, according to Appellant, by asking him to lighten up on her neck, but Appellant denied that she became unconscious during sex. Appellant told police that Dickie then left his apartment alive. Liar. With her payment of $150. On the morning after Dickie's death, Appellant told police that he had parked his car to smoke at a location about 100 yards from where Dickie's body was found. Then, after going to his father's house to do laundry, he claimed he ate at a nearby restaurant close to where the body was discovered. That restaurant, however, was closed and under construction that day. Upon searching Appellant's home, police found a small piece of rolled-up duct tape on the bedroom carpet at the foot of the bed, and a larger piece of duct tape tacked to the back corner of the dresser. DNA testing on the duct tape discovered the bedroom floor revealed a mixture of DNA from at least 3 contributors. The DNA supervisor for the Austin Police Department testified that Dickie and Appellant could not be excluded as contributors to the DNA profile. A small blood stain on the carpet by the bed was also discovered. The DNA supervisor testified that Dickie was the source of the strain, excluding identical siblings. Photographs of Appellant taken during the search show what appears to be an injury below Appellant's left nipple, an injury near the shin of his right leg, and a scratch on his left thigh. Upon searching Appellant's rental car, police found dead grass and leaves consistent with the material found concealing Dickie's body. The chief medical examiner for Travis County concluded Dickie died as a result of homicidal asphyxia from suffocation or strangulation. The medical examiner made his conclusions prior to and without the benefit of Appellant's statement to the police. Dickie's body had several injuries, including a large bruise on her left neck muscle, and tiny hemorrhages on her eyes and eyelids, lacerations and bruising on her lips, bruising on her upper arms, faint abrasions resembling ligature marks on her wrists, a 1-inch bruise on the top of her head, and hemorrhaging in the lining of her sinuses. What the fuck, Nathaniel? I'm gonna smoke a Lucky Strike for old time's sake. Not sponsored. Amy's lungs had also filled with fluid, but her voice box was intact. The medical examiner concluded that the blood on her face likely came from her mouth as part of the dying process, but was not the result of a pre-mortem injury. The medical examiner testified that it would take a good amount of force to cause the bruise on Dickie's neck. It was unusual to see a bruise that large on the neck. It was a recent injury because there was no evidence of healing, and the injury was consistent with someone pressing their hand against that portion of the neck for about 5 minutes, or punching hard on the side of her neck. Although she did not have a corresponding bruise on the right neck muscle, the medical examiner testified that this could be caused by many variables, including if the victim was lying on her side and pressure was only coming from one side of her neck. The medical examiner additionally testified that the hemorrhaging in her eyes and fluid in her lungs were consistent with death by asphyxiation. Although hemorrhaging in the eyes may also result from the body lying face down, the medical examiner testified that this was less common. The medical examiner further testified that the ligature marks on her wrists were consistent with being bound or tied with wide tape or a belt. With regard to the bruising and lacerations on her lips, the medical examiner testified that these injuries were consistent with a punch or a palm pressed hard against the mouth. With regard to Dickie's cocaine use, forensic toxicology testing revealed that she had cocaine in her blood at a concentration of 0.67 milligrams per liter, an amount the medical examiner described as pretty average. Pretty average? I want this medical examiner's name and number so he can elaborate on this shit. What the fuck is a pretty average cocaine level in your bloodstream? According to the medical examiner, this amount of cocaine could not have resulted in an overdose, but any amount of cocaine use can cause death by sudden heart attack, and this was more likely to occur if the person was a chronic user. The medical examiner, however, excluded cocaine as the cause of Dickie's death, based on the bruise on her neck, the hemorrhaging in her eyes, and fluid in her lungs, which were all consistent with death by asphyxiation, as well as the additional bruising on the body and the fact that she was found naked in a field concealed with leaves and grass. Based on the compilation of these findings, the medical examiner concluded that the death was caused by homicidal asphyxiation from strangulation or suffocation. The medical examiner further testified that appellant having his hands on her neck for 5 minutes would be clearly sufficient to cause her death. This is his appeal? We're on like page 7 of him just like detailing how fucking guilty he is, and it's still an appeal. The defense, however, called a physician specializing in psychiatry and forensic psychology who testified that, in his opinion, Dickie died from cocaine delirium. This was something that I convinced myself was true for years when I was in fucking denial about Nathaniel's guilt in all of this. I'm not proud of that. I'm fucking very ashamed. That was me lying to myself and fucking being delusional. I couldn't reconcile this shit. The expert witness testified that cocaine delirium became a recognized syndrome after a series of deaths occurred in the 1980s involving individuals who had non-lethal amounts of cocaine in their system, but suddenly died after the police used minimum restraint against them. Police using minimum restraint. Oh, this sounds familiar. The witness described cocaine delirium as a state in which a person experiences wild fluctuations in mood from cocaine use, such that the person may appear fine, but then suddenly become incoherent or act crazy. He further testified that people experiencing cocaine delirium can die from what is thought to be a respiratory exhaustion, in which the person will just stop breathing. According to the defense expert, it is believed that cocaine delirium can be aggravated by use of restraint, but medical professionals are not certain of this fact because it's a very hard issue to study. In forming his opinion that Dickie died from cocaine delirium, the defense expert conducted an interview with appellant, and based on his opinion of the circumstances of Dickie's death as described by appellant, and Dickie's history of drug use, I'm not sure if I don't know how to read or if I'm just reading this sentence wrong. Dickie's death as described by appellant and Dickie's history of drug use, but did not review the police report, appellant's interview with the police, or autopsy photographs. On cross-examination, the expert admitted that defense counsel had informed him that appellant was a known liar. When asked if it was his testimony that the medical examiner was wrong, the expert answered no. The defense additionally called a boyfriend who had known Dickie for 2 years prior to her death. The witness testified that Dickie had been using a lot of cocaine for a long period of time leading up to her death, and that he guessed she was using as much as $500 worth of crack cocaine per day. How much does crack cocaine cost? Is it cheaper than regular cocaine? $500 of cocaine is a lot. I don't think I could do that much in a day. That's more than a day. You know what? We don't need to get into it. According to the witness, Dickie had complained of heart palpitations and on one occasion asked to be taken to the hospital. But he declined because he believed she was seeking attention and being melodramatic. Fuck you, dude. The witness further testified that Dickie would stay up for several days in a row and just become delusional and make no sense at all. On the day before she died, the witness testified that Dickie was high, but not so strung out that she was incoherent. Sufficiency of the evidence. In his first point of error, appellant challenges the legal sufficiency of evidence supporting his convictions and the jury's deadly weapon finding. Appellant improperly combines all 3 points of error into a single argument. We first address the sufficiency of the evidence supporting appellant's convictions for murder and tampering with physical evidence. The standard for determining whether the evidence is legally sufficient to support a conviction is whether, after viewing the evidence in the light of the most favorable to the prosecution, any rational trier of fact could have found the essential elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. It is not clear from the record on what date this incident occurred. Appellant additionally argues that the evidence is factually insufficient to support his convictions. However, we do not review the factual sufficiency of the evidence to support a jury's finding on the elements of a criminal defense that the state is required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, like, they're citing other cases. That's what they do in these documents, as you probably know. Murder conviction. Appellant challenges his murder conviction, arguing there is insufficient evidence to support the jury's finding that he caused Dickie's death. Under the hypothetically correct jury charge as hypothetically correct. Bro, you're fucking guilty. Get a grip. Hypothetically correct jury charge as authorized by the indictment on this case. Appellant committed the offense of murder if he intentionally or knowingly caused Dickie's death or intended to cause serious bodily injury and committed an act clearly dangerous to human life that caused Dickie's death. When the trial court's charge authorizes the jury to convict on more than one theory, as it did in this case, the verdict of guilty will be upheld if the evidence is sufficient on any one of the theories. After reviewing the evidence in light of the most favorable to the prosecution, we conclude a rational jury could have found appellant guilty of murder beyond a reasonable doubt. First, Dickie was last seen alive with appellant, and her blood was found in his apartment. Duct tape consistent with Dickie's DNA profile was also found on appellant's bedroom floor. In addition, DNA testing on the duct tape found matted in her hair revealed a mixture of DNA consistent with both Dickie's and appellant's DNA. Second, it was uncontested that Dickie's physical injuries were consistent with the inculpatory statements made by appellant to police. Dickie had a large, recent bruise on her neck, hemorrhaging in her eyes, and fluid in her lungs. These injuries were consistent with appellant's admissions to the police that he used Dickie's neck as a brace to push himself up during sex and had squeezed her neck with both hands for up to 5 minutes. 5 minutes on someone's neck, just sitting there in silence. God. A jury could also reasonably infer that the ligature marks on her wrists came from the duct tape found on the bedroom floor and in her hair. Further, her injuries were consistent with the medical examiner's conclusion that Dickie died from homicidal asphyxia, from suffocation or strangulation. Moreover, the medical examiner testified that appellant placing his hand on Dickie's neck for up to 5 minutes, as admitted by appellant, would have been clearly sufficient to cause her death. There was also ample evidence from which the jury could rationally conclude that appellant had been purposely dishonest about his relationship with Dickie and the circumstances of her death. There was also evidence connecting appellant to the concealment of Dickie's body, including his own admission that he had parked his car within 100 yards from where Dickie's body was found on the morning of her death, And the jury could have also reasonably inferred that the bamboo covering her body came from the home of appellant's father. Because it did. While each piece of evidence may lack sufficiency when viewed in isolation, the totality of the evidence coupled with the reasonable inferences that may be drawn from that evidence is legally sufficient to support appellant's murder conviction. On appeal, however, appellant contends the state failed to establish the necessary but-for causal connection between his conduct and Dickie's death. Appellant's causation argument requires application of Section 6.04a of the Penal Code, which provides that a person is criminally responsible if the result would not have occurred but for his conduct, operating either alone or concurrently with another cause, unless the concurrent cause was clearly sufficient to produce the result and the conduct of the actor clearly insufficient. Under section numbers, there must be a but-for causal connection between the defendant conduct and the resulting harm. Dude, I can't do this anymore. Straight up. I'm sorry. I worked with and was friends with this dude for 3 fucking years. And he really fucking... roughed up this girl's fucking body and killed her with his fucking bare hands, dude. If you don't have trust issues, you should. Because you can never, ever truly fucking know somebody. Ever. Ever. Do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife? You know they could kill you in your sleep. Any fucking day now. Any fucking day. They could. Just don't trust people. Just don't. I really thought that this would be like a fun video to make where I could talk about my experience and what this guy, Nathaniel Briscoe, did and like snark on it, you know? But it's upsetting. It is. It's upsetting. And I remember when he was convicted and sentenced, a girlfriend of mine talked about how like she was going to be writing him and staying in touch, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I should do that because I know him and I tend to stay in touch with people that I know, but I never did that because I felt like I don't want to be friends with a murderer. Do you? Like, if you have like murdered someone, you're disqualified from potential friendship with me. I don't think that is an unreasonable standard. So you know what? Fuck Nathaniel Briscoe, and my heart fucking goes out to Amy Dickie's family. And ultimately, I want to thank you for listening. I feel like forgiveness is very important, so I want you to forgive yourself for the time that you've wasted watching this video. And have a good day. Don't fucking murder anybody. I won't write you in prison. I won't. I'm not going to write you.